So let's now talk about the execute process task. So let me make a new package, rename that package files04. And here's the execute process task. Now this, as you can see in the little helpful pop-up, it executes anything that's an executable or a batch file, which is technically an executable. So really I can do .exe, .bat, .cmd, .com files. Those are all Win32 executables. Generally speaking, and this is probably a little bit of a generalization, but anything that I can do at the command line, then I can do in the execute process task. So I drop down to the command line and I can use the dir, and I could say, show me all of the files in this folder. So it shows me all of the, or actually show me all the directories here. So here's dir desktop. So actually, let's just cd to the desktop and show me the dir here. So show me all the files and folders. Well, what if I just want to see all of the files that end in X? Okay, so dir asterisk dot asterisk X. So you remember our use of the asterisk from the previous video talking about the previous two with FTP. So there you go. I can use that here. dir is an executable, so I could actually work with it. There are many executables here that we could use. ftp.exe, and so I can see, here's all the switches. So I just use the /help to generate the documentation. I'm sure you've seen that, right? So I could use that to figure out the syntax of how to execute it. So anything that you can execute in Windows, you can execute within SSIS using this execute process task. Now, this for me, and maybe I'm different than some people, undoubtedly in my usage. For me, this is, generally speaking, executing something that I've written myself, like a C# application, a VB application, a PowerShell commandlet, something that I've written, or I'm executing some type of compression software, WinRAR, 7-zip, WinZip, something of that nature. Those tend to be the two cases that I do this. Some of you might be saying, well, I've got this third-party piece of software that I use, and I need to execute that inside of SSIS. Perfect. Done that a bunch of times. I don't tend to do it today, but I've done that many, many times, particularly in the old DTS. So execute process task. Very, very simple to work with. You define your executable. Up here you can specify that it requires the full path to the executable, or whether that the environment variables will already contain the path to it. So it's probably a best practice here to just type, not a best practice, it's a good idea for maintainability to just go ahead and pass in the full path to this if you're unsure that it's going to be in the environment variables. So like I might have C my batch file dot bat, and that would be sufficient because I require full file name set to true. But if I had full file name set to false, then I could just say my batch file dot bat, and it would look in all the paths to find something matching that. Now your arguments here. Okay, so here's my executable. Notice it's a file browser. I don't really have one that I want to do right here. Here's what we'll do. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will go to my C drive and I will create a new text file, my batch file, and I will just have it do a make directory C in batch file. So MD is the make directory command, and I will then change the extension to BAT. Okay. No extensions, no fancy variables. So now in my execute process, I can come over here and use my file browser to go to the BAT. So notice the executable files that it sees. So I say my batch file.bat. I don't need any arguments, but if you had switches, you separate them just with a space. So you'd say dash A, dash B, dash E, R, you know, and then you put your text arguments or whatever in colon. I don't have any arguments here. Working directory, if you don't need to require the full name or where you want it to operate in, I don't have to put that in there. Your variables, your input variables and output variables, these are particularly going to be handy when you are passing data or when you are doing troubleshooting. So the output variable really can help you. The error variable can help you as well. So if your executable ends in an error and you want to be able to later review that information, then you can store that in a variable. So execute process task error, right? And so it stores it just in a string, and then whatever the output of the process is, then you can store it in a variable that you can later work with. So I would just call it, again, it's a string, ept output. And again, if you're passing information in that's too big for your arguments, you can put it right there. Generally speaking, most Windows applications end with a 0. So they always return a 0 to the Windows shell, telling them that it executed successfully. So you typically don't have to specify that. A timeout value right here that you can see, a timeout of 0 means that it won't ever time out. So you can just specify this is in seconds, as you see down there. And for your window style, you can specify that it is a hidden window. You know, in SSIS, this is generally done on a server run by an automated process like a job. So do you really want it to pop up? Maybe that's something you do during debugging while you're actually designing the package, but typically you would go ahead and close that out and set it to hidden in the real world. So that's it. If it runs successfully, it will create that folder. So let's execute it. It says that it was successful, and sure enough, it created the folder in batch file. I mean, there's not a whole lot to the execute process task. Now, I want to show you about 7-zip. So if you probably are familiar with any number of compression utilities, my favorite is 7-zip. It has the distinction of being free, which is a good thing, but it's also great compression ratios. It's very fast. It comes with both a GUI and a command line. Very easy to work with here. I don't know, it's on SourceForge. You can go to your search engine of choice and just Google 7-zip with a dash, 7-zip. So go download it, go install it, go play with it. Once you do, on my 32-bit machine, let me show you where it put the files. It put them in the program files under 7-zip. Okay. And the files that I want to work with here's the graphical version, the file manager, and then here is the command line version, 7z.exe. All right then, okay. Well, the help file down here has a whole section on using the switches, and you got syntax examples on how to do this. Like for this one, here's the add. Here's how we actually add it. We would add, in this case, all files and subfolders in that directory into a folder called a file called archive1.zip. Sweet, super easy, right? Not difficult at all. Awesome. Okay. Well, let's do it. Let's now use the execute process task. Let's get rid of that one. We don't need that. Let's download a file from our FTP. So let's make our FTP connection we've done over the last 3. I'm not even going to tell you what the connection info is because I've done it 3 times already. Okay, I really will. The password is learn it first. If you want to look at that, in case you didn't watch. And I want to receive files. And so the remote path, I'm just going to pick the customers.txt file. And the local path, we will make an existing folder of the C drive. So I'm just going to download it to the C drive. I'm in development mode. Not a whole lot to do. And the next thing I want to do is zip it up. So let's just call this one download to C. Zip it up. All right. So execute process. Come over here. My process here, my executable, I can type it in if I don't know the full path to it. But 7zip.exe. My arguments now are A, where I want to go. Now, A is add, and then I want to make the file customers.zip, and I want to add to the zip file customers.txt. So I don't think I can get that. Let's see if I can zoom in right there. I'm trying to zoom in. There we go. Sorry about that. So there are the arguments that I want to pass in. This could be stored in a variable. You can store my output in the variable output, the errors in here, and we could use a script task to show those or output that to a text file that we needed to. We say OK, and we go. Downloading right now. Let's just go watch this at the C drive. And unable to receive files, task failed, downloaded to C. I think the file existed. Here's what I think happened. And the default of the FTP is not to overwrite the destination. And so because the file existed and I had that set to false, it failed. So let me change that to true. And up here, notice that I said stop on failure. So sorry. So I can go delete that customers.txt. My fault. So it's downloading now. Let's look at our C drive. We'll see customers being downloaded. There it is. You saw that flash of the command line, and look, there it is. It has zipped up our customers.txt. That's pretty cool, huh? Later on, we're going to talk about how to download a whole bunch of stuff, how to zip up all the files in a folder. We're going to do this all with expressions and variables. But I think that I find use of 7-zip with the execute process task all the time. And I won't be surprised to see in the next version, not the R2 SQL 2008, but the SQL 2012 or whatever it is, to see a compression task. Wish we had it now.